All right. Hello. Welcome to an episode of NCBA Coffee Break. I'm really excited. We have Joel Rosenthal with us. I'm Nathan Willner. I'm the NCBA's Government Affairs Officer. And Joel, you're with ProVest's. So maybe we start off, tell us who you are and what ProVest's does.
Thanks, Nathan. Thank you for having me. ProVest is a leading national process server. Service of process is our core business. I head up our business development on the collection side, and I'm the vice president there. In terms of my background, 20 years in the collection industry, last 10 in process serving. So been unfortunately old enough to be around the block.
Joel, you are definitely part of the industry, and we're always excited to have you at our conferences and part of our support network. So it's been fantastic, our relationship. We're talking about process serving. Why is compliance in that realm so critical for those who practice in our space?
I think it's a consumer touch point. So wherever you have that, it's a risk area. When a process server knocks on a door, they're encountering the consumer. There have also, because of that, there have been several notable compliance failures related typically to rogue process servers in the field or rogue process serving companies. And as a result, in my recollection, at least 2 law firms have gone out of business because of those issues. So it can, you may be using a vendor, but it can impact your business as well. And that's typically related to falsifying service is typically the problem in those cases.
So because it's so critical to make sure compliance is up to snuff, so to speak, within the industry, what tools have attorneys and industry had up until now to evidence good service?
Well, I think it's pretty widespread within the process serving industry to have smartphone apps that the servers would use to after any attempt, typically not just service, they would step onto the curb, take a photo of the residence or wherever they are making the attempt on without any individuals in it, and that on a smartphone, it captures. That photo will capture GPS coordinates as well as time date stamping. So you have evidence of being in a specific place at a specific time and a visual of it. And then what's important also to do is internal audit of that. So the process serving company needs to audit those things. In ProVest's case, we have a specific internal audit team, and they review actually 10 different data points for every attempt, such things as the proximity of the GPS coordinates to the address, the feasibility of the route that they could make it in the time that was that it was between 2 photos, and actually looking at the photo, is it actually of a house or is it of a cat sitting on a couch, which we've actually seen that. So anything and everything happens. So, and then there's several other items that we do typically.
So, obviously you go through quite an extensive review of the service and use as many tools as that are currently available through technology. But ProVest's, I understand, has a new QA, a quality assurance PDF compliance tool. How does that play into what we just discussed, and how is that sort of unique right now of what we're seeing in the industry?
It's sort of the next step. With everything, whether you're looking at compliance or performance, wherever, you always have to keep taking the next step. And so up to now, process serving companies have stored the information I mentioned in the last question, the GPS, the photos, the time date stamping, and other specifics. What we've come up with is and we call it ProVest's QA PDF. It's an exportable PDF, one pager that has all of that on it. So it puts the photos, it puts the time date stamping, it puts the GPS coordinates, it puts all of the service information onto one page, and it's exportable so that the client can have that on their system, so that if 3 years after service, somebody gets garnished and they challenge, I was never served, which happens every day, they would have evidence to dispute that in court rather than having to depend on a process serving vendor. A, they may not be in a relationship with them anymore. B, that company may not exist. C, they may not have stored it forever. So it's another tool. And then I would argue, and once again, I'm not an attorney, and Nathan, you can tell me if you agree with this or not. I know I'm not supposed to be the one asking the questions, but I think it's better to have evidence that was put together right at the same time as the service, rather than somebody putting that together 3 years later. So to me, that to me, I think is also an important facet of this.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think in general, things that happen that you put together closer near the time of the of the um, of the event is obviously there's a level of credibility that comes along with it because the information was fresh. But as we always say, we are not giving legal advice. This is not supposed to be in place of anything that anyone talks to their own attorney about. This is general information, and so even though I'm an attorney, we're not giving legal advice today. So, but yeah, absolutely, that kind of thing comes up all the time. One thing that I always heard when I was practicing and I was in court is that service is always in play. So to have that at your fingertips would definitely be useful. And again, this isn't legal advice, but the real question is, what would a law firm, or how does a law firm that is in a situation where a judge or opposing counsel or the consumer themselves is questioning service, what would a law firm do, or how would they get this documentation?
So I think the most important thing is to buy time. A lot of times, from what I've heard, is in court or in a situation, attorneys can unfortunately sometimes back down and just give in. And my based on our experience, it's better to buy time to be able to put evidence together to defend that service was legitimate. And that would include the affidavit of service, a server statement, their notes. In the case of our new thing, the QA PDF, we also have, in our case, servers carry a clipboard, and they take handwritten notes in addition to what they put into the app, which they're one and the same. But on the clipboard document, they will always ask the consumers being served, can you sign here? Which half the time people don't, but half the time they do. Nobody's forcing them to. So half the time we end up with a signature of the servee as well.
Yeah, those we used to call them field notes, but they do come in very handy. And I know many times the judge wanted to see those because if that didn't match up with the type printed affidavit said, you had a problem. So that is, you're dead on, Joel, with that information being important. And finally, we're coming close to the end of our coffee break here. What's the risk of a process server being paid a higher fee for good serves versus non-serves? And maybe you can explain how the industry's worked up until now in general, as far as pricing as paying a server.
The major national organizations understand, and I'll explain in a second, what the compliance risk is of having what we call differential pricing, where serves and non-serves are at different prices, always the serve being the higher price. The major national companies stay away from that because of the compliance risk, but there's a history of that differential pricing in a number of states. Maryland, New York, Colorado are ones that come to mind. There's probably others. And those have been states that historically have had process serving scandals. The two firms that I mentioned before that went out of business, one was in Colorado, one in New York. What happens is by having differential pricing, it sets up an incentive for a malicious process server to cheat because they're getting paid more. typically where a process server will cheat is if they can either make more money or save time. So if you have pricing that's the fee to them the same for both serves and non-serves, you eliminate that risk. If you have the GPS time date stamping and internal audit, you eliminate the time factor of them cheating by, for instance, the feasibility of the time between stops. So if you eliminate all that, the only thing that's left is somebody who's a pathological cheater, which, there are going to be people like that, but otherwise there's no incentive to cheat. So I think it's very important to have the process server company and the process server in the field to both be paid the same for serves and non-serves.
It sounds makes good sense. Taking out any sort of incentive to maybe cut the corners, and obviously no one in this industry wants any corners cut. We want to make sure that everyone is doing things right. So thank you, Joel, and thank you, ProVest. Thank you so much for joining me today on our coffee break series. This is great, valuable information, and we look forward to have you on some future coffee breaks if you'll come back.
I would absolutely. Thank you for having me, and appreciate everything that you and NCBA does.
Thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone.